What's up guys, this is Balázs from Racing Brick. The Powered Up app received a very exciting update today. This time it's not only about pianos or haunted houses, we also get very useful new features, so let's take a closer look. The new app version is 3.5.0, it is already available on Google Play and in the iOS App Store as well. According to the changelog, the main new feature is the custom controller interface. That's the one I'm really excited about for sure. There's a never timeout function, which we'll need to check to find out what is it about, and a few tweaks for the grand piano and the haunted house. Now let's fire it up. The Android tablet has the new version of the app, the iPad still runs with the old version for comparison. After the launch they both seem to be the same, with the different set-specific control profiles on the main screen. If we jump to the settings, here is the never timeout feature that can be turned off, it is on by default. I assume this will disconnect the hub after a certain time if it is turned off, but I will test it later. Other than this, everything seems to be the same. Now let's go to the coding canvas. Here we still have the same two options to choose from, but if we proceed with the controller one, then there's a third type of controller to pick, which should be the customizable one. So this is our main screen in this new mode. In the top right corner we have an icon to lock the widget editor that takes us to the usual coding canvas. Tapping on the icon again brings us back to the editor interface. Okay, let's add our first widget. There are 4 main widget groups with tons of different possibilities. A lot of them are simple color variations, but there are still a lot of options. So in the first group we have the buttons, then we can scroll seamlessly to the next group, which is called controls. Then comes the displays category, and apparently the fourth one is only a teaser, which will become the decorations group. Honestly, I would also rather focus on the functional part first, so let's see what these things can do. Let's start with a very simple button. If I select the first one, then there's a box and a check mark to highlight my selection, and I can accept it with the icon in the bottom left corner. So I have the button added to the canvas. What can we do with it? There's a light gray grid for snapping the elements, so I can move the controller around. Apparently at this point I cannot resize it or change the properties. I guess this is the reason why we get a selection of different colors for the same buttons at the moment. Later on we will be able to change the colors ourselves, so the number in the library will decrease. If I move the button around, there's a trash bin appearing at the bottom. This is how I can remove it. Let's add this one back again and see how it appears on the coding canvas. Okay, this is our interface, but apparently no default code is added to the canvas with the widget. But here is a brand new block category with this teal color. This is how we can use our widgets as an input or output. Pretty cool. So let's grab some hardware quickly and see how it works in practice. Here is my Technic hub with an L motor attached to port A. So let's add the input block for the button here and choose a simple motor controller block. And yes, it's working. If I go back, you can see that the input block for the button has an identification number. This is the same that you see on the editor interface in the corner of the widget as well. Okay, now let's add much more and see how they work. Here's an interesting thing. I can actually switch to the controller mode, start whatever code is linked to the button, and then switch to the editor and add other buttons or even remove this one while the code is still running. This is a bit weird, not sure if it is a bug or a feature. It would be better if we could select more widgets to add at the same time. If I want to add a lot, then I have to do it one by one. Since there are a lot of color variations, if I want to look for something down the list, then I have to scroll from the top every time. By the way, if we have multiple widgets, then the on-the-fly editor makes sense to quickly check the number that belongs to each widget. Apparently the print on the buttons or the shape of the basic ones does not affect the behavior, so it's just for decoration or identification of the functions. The two ones below are however different. They have dedicated input blocks, or at least they seem to have. For the first sight I thought that these two belong to these widgets, but apparently they don't. This is again the situation where we would desperately need a little more information than the few lines of updates in the App Store, as we need to play this guessing game every single time something new is released. I'm still fine with it, but I'm sure there are a lot of folks who will become frustrated quickly. At least give me a chance to talk to the devs for 5 minutes and then I will share the information in such videos. Anyway, let's move on. So apparently this horizontal input block belongs to both type of toggle buttons. You can add this if switch and assign different actions to the two branches. This way a simple on-off switch can be created. Apparently the other type of input block has another task. Now let's see the controls. We have two types of joysticks, one widget with plus and minus buttons, and two sliders that jump back to the center position once released. The joysticks have their own input block where you can select which axis value to use as an input. If I assign it to the motor and again create a simple loop, then I can control the motor speed with the joystick. The smaller joystick works the same way. Here comes the input block that I tried to use earlier. This one belongs to these widgets. The first one is for bang control. The output is 100 or minus 100 for the two buttons. The other one is a proportional slider. The output value is between 100 and minus 100, and it jumps back to 0 once it is released. One remark: apparently the train forks are left out from this round, as there are no sliders that can be set to a desired speed and it stays there. I had a workaround created for the train controls and I will check if that still works here, but it would be nice to get proper dedicated sliders without the return to 0 function. And here is our last group, the displays. It is actually a single type of gauge with different colors. With the corresponding block we can attach any input blocks to show the value. Now let's grab some official sets and try to create controls for them. Here is the rally car. Let's see if we can use the recently added simplified steering and throttle control blocks with the input blocks. And yes, they work. That's pretty cool. With the display widget we can also show the speed of the car, but apparently it can go faster than it should. There's one weird thing with the joystick and it works the same way with the stock car control interface as well. The system only checks the position on the y-axis for speed control, so if I steer to the extreme left or right, my car stops. That's really not how the joystick should behave, or at least we would need to be able to select the distance from 0 to be used for speed control. Another cool thing that is finally possible with the customizable interface: I can simply add a button to control anything that I want to add to the empty ports, for example a light. Now let's try this with the 4x4 Extreme Off-Roader. I added sliders this time as I prefer this control method over the joystick. It gives you more precision. A pretty simple configuration again, and it works. Although there's a slight error, throttle works reversed. Luckily it is not that difficult to change it, although the solution is again far from being trivial for someone who does not have coding experience. If you want to see some feedback from the hub like in the official Control Plus profile, you can also add gauges to show the X and Y tilt. So, car control became pretty easy, both with the joystick and the slider. Now what about trains? The official control interface of the Crocodile train has a speed regulator wheel that you can use to change the speed, but the train doesn't stop if you release the controls. With the currently available sliders, unfortunately you need to hold the position because the train will stop immediately if you release it. If you remember my hack with the two slider interface, there you can trick the system and make it hold the position. Unfortunately here it won't work, as there's no block I could use to tell the slider what should be its position. So there's one thing we can use: we can replicate the buttons of the powered up remote and regulate the speed that way. Here are the buttons to increase and decrease the speed and then stop, and I added the gauge to show the speed. This is the corresponding code. We need to use a variable to store the speed value, and then trigger these sequences to add or to subtract from the speed value when the buttons are pressed. The last one sets the speed value to 0 and the train stops. So, about that timeout switch. I tried to test it and I left the app connected to a hub for 30 minutes and it still did not disconnect, so I'm not sure what the effect really supposed to be. There's one thing left I had to check: the support of the large angular motor from the Volvo set. And as you see, apparently it is still not recognized. I really don't know why it is that difficult to add the support for that motor, while the Spike Prime variant that is totally identical is supported. Please folks, flip that switch. Okay, now let's sum it up. I think this update was very needed and it gives so much flexibility to our custom creations with powered up hardware. It is possible now to create custom controls for the official sets with extra buttons to use the empty ports, and of course it opens the door for mocks as well. I have to say, however, that this is still just the beginning of the road. There are many things missing. First and foremost, documentation. The app is still a guessing game. It is very difficult to figure out how things are supposed to work. Sample code would be also very necessary. I know that these things are coming. There was a presentation recently at BrickCon where a redesign of the coding canvas was promised with user-friendly groups, documentation and sample code. It can't arrive soon enough. About the update itself, a simple numeric display that takes less space would be useful, and also a joystick with a proper behavior that can be used to drive a car. I'm sure train folks would love to see a slider for trains as well. And also labels. I would like to add labels to show what my controllers are doing, but I guess this will come when the decorations will be activated. So I think this is a very useful update that extends the possibilities of the powered up system. Hope to see more features coming soon, and I hope the support of that angular motor will be solved as soon as possible. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe and tap the notification bell if you don't want to miss my Technic reviews and other LEGO RC videos. See you next time, bye bye!